Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll learn about Minnesota veterans going on outdoor adventures. But first, joining me now is our guest, the new interim commissioner of the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services, Pat Trainer. Pat, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, great to be with you this morning, John.
As we get started, we always ask, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Well, I was the head of Dakota Medical Foundation. As you know, we've had a couple of these conversations in the past, and Dakota Medical Foundation really has the same, I know we're going to talk about the Department of Health and Human Services, and we really have that same vision, the healthiest people on earth right here in North Dakota. So it's a little different vantage point, and it's quite a bit different than Dakota Medical Foundation, but what a thrill to share that same bold vision of the healthiest people on earth.
Yeah. Okay. Well, talk about how you were chosen. Of course, it's an interim position.
Yes.
And how long that will last. Tell us about it.
So I know Governor Armstrong, and it's really an opportunity of a lifetime to work for this administration. We started talking about it months ago. Would that ever be something that the Dakota Medical Foundation board would allow me to do for a one-year civil service opportunity? And boy, what an opportunity to make a difference and to learn more about how this state takes care of the most vulnerable amongst us. As you know, Health and Human Services is really there as a safety net for folks that lack access to health care. Dakota Medical Foundation used to be a hospital. And then really all these programs that help people at their most vulnerable time. And all these nonprofits, by the way, that work on these issues that also have relationships with the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as, we operate Giving Hearts Day from a Dakota Medical perspective. So we're working with nonprofits each and every day at Health and Human Services. So whether it's someone that, struggles from addiction, whether it's facing something pretty dark, which is child sexual abuse, Health and Human Services is there to help folks at the most critical time, and particularly children, disabled folks, and Dakota Medical shares ultimately the same vision, helping people who struggle reach independence, healing, all sorts of circumstances that happen in any human being's life. So ultimately, human services, honoring health, body, mind, and spirit. I couldn't be more thrilled in this, I've only been here a few days, and so it's been an immersion into the great work done by this department all across North Dakota. So what an opportunity to learn. I think I told you a little bit earlier that it's like I'm going to get a PhD in a year. So this will last a year, and then we'll get into more about what my charge is as we have this discussion today here in Bismarck.
Well, you've talked about the role a little bit, but can you expand a little bit more about what is the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services employees and funding?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's massive. So it's a $5.7 billion budget, $5.7 billion, over 2,600 employees. I'd like to tell you that my first 60 days will be a listening and learning tour. So they're having me go across all of North Dakota to meet with the people closest to the people that are struggling and need our help. I mean, this is a safety net organization, Health and Human Services, and so we're dealing with aging services, we're dealing with child protective services, we're dealing with food. Food insecurity is a huge issue, and it's growing worse in our state. So we need to make sure that people have the basics, food, clothing, shelter, and then access to care. A lot of people have unexpected medical expenses. So let me tell you about one program. It'd be Medicaid. Medicaid is a health coverage for people that qualify because of low income and different circumstances and challenges that they face. It could be developmental disabilities. The budget, for Medicaid is like we're talking close to $3 billion over the biennium. Everything is discussed in terms of 2 years because the legislature, as you know, meets every 2 years. One of the things we're tracing through, of course, is the flow of the funding. So most of these programs have two components to them: federal funding, which we might talk about a little bit today, because there's a lot going on, of course, with federal funding, everybody knows, and then also state funding. So the growth in the budget, at the federal level has been exponential in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And then the same thing with the growth in the budget of the state budget. As you've talked to many people in your programs, it's really grown. But we've also had a lot of growth in people facing struggles. We've never had a time where there's so many people struggling with mental health problems, addiction, substance use addiction, and making sure this organization, Health and Human Services, provides avenues for people to reach healing and ultimately independence. We want to have people reach their maximum potential, to be contributors in our society, to have purpose and meaning, in their lives, and to keep people and families safe, and on a path to independence. So Medicaid's a huge program. Like right now, there are over 100,000 people, North Dakotans. We have 780,000 people in North Dakota, roughly. Mm-hmm. And we have over 105,000 people on Medicaid, like in the past month. So that guarantees that they get health care. So they really need access to making sure that their kids, that whether they have a special needs kid or they're just a family facing struggle, that they have these basic needs met. So food, economic assistance, so that they're not ejected from their apartment or their home. There's all sorts of help that this human service agency provides as a safety net. And so being a safety net is critical. And the governor really wants us to focus on service delivery and making sure we're helping as many people. We're going to ask another question and perhaps go into that, John.
Yeah, what are your goals for the department, and specifically, what have you been tasked to accomplish?
Well, number one is, and what Governor Armstrong and his team really want us to focus on is, there have been a lot of changes at Health and Human Services. And so really, really helping people empower people within the agency that are closest to the families, that they be empowered to make the right decisions, within this governmental framework and limited budget, to do the very best in delivering help to the neediest amongst us, and to deliver it in such a way that is quick, and simple. And so the experience that we provide to people, really he wants to focus on that. The people that struggle need to know that as a state, we absolutely care about people that struggle, and that Health and Human Services is there to help people that struggle. Greatest example, I would say, would be addiction and mental health problems. The governor, as you know, he's from a family that his grandma was the head of the Mental Health Association and was a pioneer in making sure that this population of people that struggle has help and have people around them that care about them. And so that's one of the things that, I was talking with the governor, that's one of the things that he's most interested in, and I'm most interested in as well. So I would say, that's an absolute common denominator in both our leadership, is we really want to help those folks. And that's just one area. There's tons of areas, in this big entity called Health and Human Services.
Yeah, with that said, you've mentioned the budget a couple of times. What happened during this recent legislative session to your department's budget, and what impact will it have on the department?
I'm going to pick one because I know we're limited in time, but one that's super important is these behavioral health clinics that are across the state. Now, these have happened since and been growing since 2014. And the ability for people to have a place to go that struggle and don't have the means to get the help. We have a shortage of providers, and we have a shortage of helpers across the state that are trained and qualified to deal with people that have anxiety, depression, they might have cognitive delay, all those kinds of things. But having behavioral health clinics as a safety net throughout the regions of North Dakota, particularly, making sure that people in the rural area have access to help. Substance use is a huge problem in our state, and making sure that we have folks that people can go and receive help from. So there's all sorts of recovery programs now that are in place. And so us making sure that people are aware that this exists. The legislature really wants an effort made to make sure that people are aware and that they have access to the actual services that will help with healing, particularly those that struggle with addiction.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Medicaid. There's been a lot of talk about federal cuts to Medicaid with this administration. A lot going on as we speak here today. Can you comment on this and what impact it could have for citizens in North Dakota?
Yes, it's gone through the House, as you know. They term it the Big Beautiful Bill. It has lots of changes that are being contemplated in the Senate at this time. One thing I will tell you about my observation is that the people, that are running these different divisions, whether it's Medicaid or the economic assistance programs, they're coming up with modeling to indicate, and estimate what will the impact be if certain programs are cut more than others. So we're doing the modeling now, but until it comes out of the Senate, we really don't know what that will be. One thing we'll certainly look for is how can we be more efficient? How can we be more efficient at removing some of the barriers for people at the front lines to make great decisions to help families? So for instance, if a family qualifies for one program, how can they also qualify for services in another program? Because you might have several things going on where the family needs help with child care assistance, the family needs help with low-income energy assistance, so that they don't get evicted for not paying certain bills, because you really want to preserve that family structure. So as these cuts come down, we have to be fully ready to make sure that the most vulnerable are protected with services, because they really can't afford not to, because then you have all sorts of things fall apart at a family level. So these heads of these divisions within Health and Human Services are prepared to make sure that we don't have an interruption in service, and that we make sure we're prioritizing the most needy amongst us, and so that there's no interruption in services. You've heard maybe work requirements are one, and so how are we going to implement that? But some of it's already implemented, because there's already a requirement that people report, whether they received another job or they got another placement. And so it affects benefits differently depending upon your job situation, your number of children you have. Mm-hmm. It's entirely complex, but it can also be simplified, and we can also focus on making sure that these cuts have minimal impact on North Dakotans that truly need our help.
Yeah, with that said, too, transition for you as interim, I understand maybe the former commissioner is going to work with you some during this. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, okay, so the former commissioner and he just stepped in. He was already the head of public health, and that's one of the divisions of Health and Human Services. Dirk Wilkie, great individual, and certainly he's been a great mentor for me. My welcoming has been wonderful. I mean, I know several of them, and so they've all been gracious, and they're super competent people, great servant leaders, and they truly care about not only our coworkers, but those that we serve at their greatest time of need.
Mm-hmm. What about the measles outbreak that has happened in Texas and a little bit in North Dakota? Is there any concern over this?
There were 34 cases that they've been monitoring. Most of those have all resolved. And there are 2 that ended up in the hospital. The rest didn't require hospitalization. And so we really want to recommend to every family out there that you really ought to have your discussion with your healthcare provider about the best way forward, to protect your family. And a lot of those cases have been connected to foreign travel, and then people that traveled here, from other jurisdictions, outside of our country. So those are things to be careful with. As you know, I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, so we always give the advice, talk to your doctor about how to protect your family. And they have the mumps, measles, and rubella vaccine for those folks to consider, and have that discussion, a private discussion with your trusted healthcare provider.
Pat, you mentioned Dakota Medical Foundation. How did your time with that prepare you for this challenge of this job?
Oh, it's been a great preparation, because it's the same, as I said earlier, we share the same vision. And we work with at Dakota Medical Foundation, and have worked with hundreds of nonprofit providers that are impacting, health and quality of life. So for instance, we've been involved with a couple that Soul Solutions is an addiction treatment center, outpatient. And so, access to addiction treatment, we've been working on it for many, many years to make sure that there's enough places that will take people right away, at their greatest time of need, struggling with addiction, some kind of substance use addiction. So having more providers that can make it economically to have a quality workforce, and to be available and accessible to people that don't necessarily have the economic means to receive treatment and healing, and ultimately getting them on the road and getting them out of their struggle and into independence and sobriety ultimately. And it's a joyful journey once they get there, but it's a rough journey, because oftentimes it takes multiple treatments, and you go back and forth between recovery and then relapse. And so we need to make sure that as North Dakotans we have the safety net of caring people. And so they've done a tremendous amount of work training people across the state to really help with that. So their peers that have been trained in helping people in the recovery, because it's the recovery. It's not necessarily just the 30 days of treatment or intensive treatment, although several need it. It's having a peer network, across North Dakota to make sure that you are helped in your recovery. Sometimes that takes years, John.
Yeah. Pat, what can you tell North Dakotans out here to assure them that services will continue as before? I mean, with everything going on.
I would tell them that, we have in my observations, we have a terrific workforce at Health and Human Services, and that they're gonna do everything that they can to ensure that every North Dakotan that needs help gets the help that they need. So whether it's, child and protective services, whether it's aging services, and whether it's Medicaid, because we really want to make sure people have access to health care, that we're going to work to make sure that the least amount of reductions in eligibility occur, and that the services are provided to the most vulnerable. So, we're gonna make sure we advocate and are great advocates for the people that we serve, as well as understanding that we're in a time frame of limited funds, so that we make the very best decisions, and that we provide the best information for policymakers to make those decisions. And I know that Governor Armstrong really wants us to focus in on making sure that we take care of the most vulnerable amongst us, including the disabled. Developmental disabled children and adults are really a area of great interest and great priority for us. And I think as North Dakotans, we all agree. So the minimal amount would be the best for us to focus on.
Well, Pat, we are out of time, but if people want more information, where can they go?
They should go to the website. So it's healthandhhs.nd.gov. That 20 minutes went really quickly, John.
It does. Pat, best of luck to you, and we look forward to it.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more. Veterans of the various branches of the U.S. Armed Forces might carry physical wounds from combat, while others might carry non-visible mental wounds. A variety of volunteer groups throughout Minnesota take veterans on outdoor adventures and other therapeutic activities. Vets get comradeship, healing, and support in ways they never expected.
The benefits that the veterans get out of coming to programs like Mandatory Fun Outdoors or other veterans programs, there's a lot of therapy in the outdoors.
It's so awesome to be able to come out and meet like-minded guys. Most of us have never met each other before, and we get together and it's like we've known each other our entire lives.
Who was your captain?
Eastman.
And we get to do all sorts of fun activities that bring us outside.
There's something about being in the woods or in a fishing boat. I mean, it's relaxing. There's just something about the outdoors that is just kind of zen.
Something about getting outside and away from everything else and with people who have had either similar trauma, similar experiences, things that they've been through that other people just don't understand. When you can put them together and get them outdoors, outside of the bar, outside of even their family, get them with people that understand because they've been there too, they start talking and we heal through talking.
Absolutely. It's not healthy to keep it in.
A lot of times, veterans that come on the events, they're like, I just didn't know if I should sign up because I don't feel like I'm deserving or somebody is more wounded, as you would say, or needs help more than I do. They're all deserving. They all signed on the line. They all left their families. 4 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever they signed up for. It's still a commitment to our country, for our freedom.
We got 52 people out here, I think, right now. We got 12 ice castles, and this is what our annual trip. We do this every year.
How are we doing in here? We got plenty of room?
The weather never cooperates, but yeah, it's a fun trip. Some of these guys haven't seen each other for 10 years or more, and they get to meet up again, which is great. But then some guys, they never met each other in their lives, and within a half hour, it's like they've been best friends their whole life. So
She's what keeps me grounded.
It's great to swap stories with all the guys, find out where they were at, what their experiences were, how they combated issues coming home as well, and just generally make new friends that were in the military with you. It's just really awesome to give a chance to give back to those guys for doing all they did for our country and for their communities and what they still do today. It's really important for us to make sure they feel heard and to find healing. You know, that's what's really big about Hometown Hero Outdoors is the healing aspect. We call it a form of outdoor recreational therapy. Doing trips like this out here in Moorhead, Minnesota today, chasing some geese, like this is where I get to center myself, to heal and come back to feeling good.
We like to offer alternatives to alcohol and drugs and suicide. We know that suicide in veterans it's just awful. So we're trying to combat that by offering these events that shy away from the drugs and alcohol.
Okay, load up Chrissy over here.
Oh, I got him! The name of our organization is Mandatory Fun Outdoors. We do outdoor adventures.
Well, that was excitement.
For veterans and their family members, as well as people who are actively serving.
Really awesome that there are organizations out there that coordinate this stuff. I appreciate it a lot.
I got 3, baby. Woo!
Let's go! We're an all-volunteer staff. We have a board. We're active in like over 30 states, and we do all fundraising. We do a national raffle. We do banquets. We get donations from VFWs, from Legion. So people sometimes like, oh, I want to donate. Well, it's only $20. And I said, well, on a typical trip, $20 can go a long way. Because a lot of us, when I host the trip myself, it's all my equipment. Nothing's paid for. My time, I said I donate. So then, hey, that covers breakfast for the day.
That's what it's all about. That's a big one. Pass that one down.
So even the small donations go a long way with us, and that's what's really important. When your dollars get donated in the state, like, we want that to stay. Because again, this is helping those in these small communities.
I don't know what it is about Minnesota, but when you get a lot of small towns all put together, they can do amazing things. They really can.
When we have an event come up, you can put your name in, and then we have a lottery to pick who goes on these events. And you get people that don't know each other from different branches of service. People are kind of quiet at first, and they start to speak up. And on day 2, they start to open up about their service. And there's always a night where people will tell the hard stories, and there will be tears, and they can relate.
2 seconds, I had a major...
They've never met each other and they're already bonding. It's hilarious. I love it. That's my favorite part, is listening to them all like chatter and talk to each other about all of their experiences and what they did, where they went. It's my favorite part.
It's things like that why I've been part of this organization for 11 years. I remember about year 3 or 4, I had a veteran, Vietnam veteran. On the 3rd night, he came down and he was really quiet at breakfast. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, did you not sleep good? He's like, because this is the first night that I have slept through the night since I got back from Vietnam, because I felt safe and secure with new brothers.
Well, that's all we have for Prairie Post this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. And by the members of Prairie Public.